how to turn problems into profit. Today on my podcast, I talked to Jesse Hazen Mallery. He's a mortgage broker who was based out of New Brunswick, recently moved to Ontario, and he's only been in business a couple of years, but the guy's absolutely crushing it. And we talk about two main topics. The first we talk about is how he is very process driven and uses his process as well as the communication touch points through his process to generate more business, to create better client experience. And I absolutely love how his brain works. And then the second thing we talk about is how he problem solves for his lender partners, for his clients and his referral partners. And we get into the weeds on some very specific ways he does this, on stuff that frankly I didn't do when I was brokering, but dang, it would have helped me immensely if I would have done it. So I think you're going to find this conversation extremely useful no matter where you're kind of at in your business. Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to our title sponsor, Finmo. Finmo is a Canadian mortgage application, document collection, submission platform designed specifically for Canadian borrowers. It's very easy for borrowers to use. It's got cool features like Smart Docs. It knows what documents your client needs based on how they fill the app. Smart Submission Notes pulls key data from the app to send to your lenders. And it's connected to the Lender Spotlight, which is the best tool for searching rates and guidelines. Check them out at lendesk.com/Finmo and ask them for a demo because it's the best way to actually see this thing in action. Finally, enjoy this episode, and I'll share my thoughts on our conversation right after. Hey, Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got in the mortgage biz.
Yeah, so I've been in the business now for 2 years. Prior to this, I worked for a finance company out in Toronto. Did that for about 3.5, 4 years or so. And I just loved the whole aspect of like underwriting and finding solutions to problems and kind of seeing the whole process from point A to the end of the transaction. So I was at a point in my life where I was sick and tired of working for somebody else, and I wanted more flexibility for traveling and doing more of my hobbies and stuff that I love doing. And then I was thinking about ways that I can incorporate what I actually love doing, but still kind of be my own boss. And that's how I got into the mortgage business. So found something that would give me the best of both worlds and doesn't feel like I'm working
and
all the time.
Look back since. So 2 years prior, what kind of finance was it that you were doing? Was it mortgage related or something else?
It was something different. So it was a company where we did financing for like vet clinics, plastic surgery clinics, home improvements, and things like that. But I was doing the full thing from application taken, document collection, underwriting, and then funding, right? So that really kind of formed my ability to do the underwriting and mortgages. It's all the same thing in the end. It's just a matter of learning the different types of products, right? So instead of financing a vet bill for $15K, I'm financing a house that's worth maybe $350, $400. So
what was the biggest challenge for you going from that, which is sort of parallel to mortgages, is not the same, to doing mortgages? What was for you? What was the biggest challenge?
I would say it was just making sure that I always want to know everything right away. So for me, it was a matter of realizing quickly enough that there's a lot of lenders out there. I'm not going to know every single policy that every single lender has, but it's just knowing that I was comfortable with the ability of doing the hard work on the back end to make sure that I can create a solid file. And then from there, you can start to learn every single policy that you need to learn as time goes. So I would say that was my biggest challenge, was being okay with not knowing everything instantly, essentially.
Right. Because that you can't, and it does change. So even your answers today could be different than a year from now, especially if it's a type of file you don't see frequently. So a couple of things that I always love talking to people about what their, what I say superpower or specific genius is. And so for you, one of them is how you are your problem solving, but the other one is process driven. And so talk to me about that. Like, what do you, about how you use process, not only for prospecting, but how you think about it for your business?
Yeah. So I always try to put myself like in the client's shoes. So I would be my worst client ever, because I'm always thinking about, okay, what's next? Why haven't I received a call, right? I haven't received a call in like 2 days. Like, is everything falling? Is there a fire? Like, what's going on, right? So I try to like every single application think about, okay, if I were the client right now, would I be panicking about this? Would I be wanting an update? So I am super big on communication and making sure that the clients are aware of every single step of their process. So even if there's no update, a simple text message, a phone call, an email saying, hey, still working on this, no updates yet, everything's still going great, just wanted to let you know. Like, you'd be surprised by how much people appreciate that. And it's just keeping them updated, right? So I try to focus my business in terms of like, if I would be freaking out right now, my clients probably are. So let's keep them updated. And I try to keep everything like digital and super quick and easy. So like emails, I'll do like video recordings when I want to like present something to a client. Just try to make them feel like we're sitting in the same room, because a lot of this stuff is all done virtually, right? So just trying to keep that comfort level there with the client as well.
So what's an example of a touch point that you've gotten some positive feedback on, either to a client or referral partner? And the fact that you're getting this feedback tells me that probably most people aren't doing it, or else it would just be it's not normalized. So what would that be?
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of clients and realtor partners just because, like you said, not everybody does this, right? So oftentimes, if a realtor makes the intro to the mortgage broker, it's like, okay, cool, awesome, thanks for the intro. But then they don't really hear back from them until it's either time to request an extension on financing or provide them with a condition of finance letter. So from the first moment is, hey, thanks for the intro. If it's okay with you, I'm going to keep you updated throughout the whole process. And then from there, it's every single thing. So collecting documents, the application been submitted, we're waiting on this, waiting on that type of deal. I obviously always get the consent from the client before I do that. But the feedback that I'm getting is like, wow, like, this is awesome. Like, I never have to think about what's going on or if this deal is going to go through, because I know that if there's an issue, you'd already be telling me about it. So it works really, really well for me.
And are you doing those things automated, or are they semi-automated, or just manually? So how are you doing that?
Semi-automated, because I cannot release full control to a system or another person. So I do have all my systems set up in a way that I know what I want to happen in each section of the process, right?
So the thing is, there's no one typical loan that's going to always be the same. So, but you have sort of a standard, and then you can deviate from that without.
Exactly. So change like dates, change product types and things like that. So I still like having the full control of like, all right, this is the stage where I send this email. I'll have my template set up, and then I'll go change whatever I need to change, add this, add that. But it helps me still kind of stay focused and feel like I know exactly where every single file is at any given time. So that's why I do kind of a mix of some automation and some manual as well.
Right. So back to the realtor touch points. I'll use that one as an example. So you get the initial lead. You're going to you say, hey, thanks. Everybody does that. When would be your next touch point after that in a typical transaction, provided you got client consent?
Yeah, so I always do like a discovery call with a client. So I always want to touch the first like 3 items, like credit's good, or if we need to address something, we address it right away, down payment, and income. I always say without those kind of 3 things, we're going to have to discuss a little bit further in terms of how we can proceed. If everything looks good on my discovery call, at that point is where we'll start the application process, and I'll update the realtor partner and say, hey, we're going to start the application process. I'll keep you posted in terms of what the next steps are going to be. At that point, if I get documents right away, the next step is going to be giving them the pre-approval letter, because I commit to every client and realtor partner that if I get a full application and all docs up front, within 24 to 48 hours, they'll get their pre-approval if everything is in order. And then once they have the pre-approval, I'll touch base with them every couple of weeks if they're like on a house search, just to make sure that if there's any specific properties they want me to run numbers on, we can do that. And then that kind of goes for a couple of weeks, maybe months, depending on how the market is going. And then from there, it's application submitted. Once we have the conditional approval, once we've got my broker complete, and then I keep the process up until closing time. So that's basically how I do it step by step. So almost anything that happens on a file, if I have consent, the realtor can be notified.
And those messages to the realtor are they automated or manual?
So they're like, I've got my template set up. So if it's like just a simple
text
like
or email.
I prefer to do email, just because everything kind of stays on the client's file. It links into my CRM, and I've got a history of everything that happens. But if a realtor says, hey, I'm too bombarded, like, can we switch to text? I'm okay doing that, just for like quick updates here and there. But anything with substance that I want documented, I always do email, which is my preference.
Right. Yeah. So there's multiple steps. There are multiple points during the process that you're actually contacting. Yeah, the other thing that we talked about from the recorder is that you're good at building these processes. What's the best change you've made to your process in the last 3 to 6 months? Like, what would you say is this has really been good?
Actually, it's for lawyers' offices. So before, maybe I would say maybe 4 or 5 months ago or so, it was always a lawyer introduction, like, hey, my clients are broker complete, like we're closing on so and so date, like here's your information, let me know if I can help any further. But then as I started realizing, like, when there's so many deals happening at once and the lawyers are busy as well, right? So any additional information that I can provide them is going to help them and make it close faster. So I started sending all the information that the lender might ever request from them. So I'll send them like the IDs that they need from the clients right away, their void check, the purchase and sale agreement, MLS listing, their job title, what type of like work it is, like all little things that they'll need to fulfill on the lender side of things that at the beginning I was not always aware of. I've started doing that, and a lot of lawyers are replying back being like, you are making our life so much easier. Like, this is amazing. Thank you. So not client facing or realtor facing, but okay. I think it's still, a positive still for an improvement the lawyers
in
as well.
The entire experience for it creates a smoother client process because there isn't more friction for the client. You're basically thinking ahead for the client, removing obstacles or problems before they get there. And you'd said in terms of tools that you use video. So how do you know when to use video communication versus some of these other mediums like text or email?
Yeah, so anytime that I want to go through any type of document or scenario or anything that I think the client may need a little bit more like guidance on, I always switch to doing like a screen recording of the document in question and then myself on the screen walking them through. So when we start looking at budget templates, I'll go through different types of scenarios based on what they've discussed with me during the discovery call. So I'll have like a budget proposal ready for them. Example could be maybe a 5-year fix, could be a variable, could be a 3-year fix, and kind of go through every single scenario and detail why I'm presenting these types of items to them. So that's super helpful because I feel like if I just send over a PDF document, I'm like, here you go, read this. They may not understand 100% what's happening, or there may be items that might be missed. So that's one instance where I'll use like a video recording. And again, for documents, because there's a lot of documents to sign when it's time to get those conditions fulfilled. Yep. So it can be overwhelming. So just walking through the video, usually keep it to like anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the type of deal. And just kind of give them an overview of what they're signing, explain a few things that they may not be aware of, or just kind of different kind of policies and stuff that most people aren't aware exist. I always do it on video. And then that way, if they have any additional questions, we jump on a call and then we discuss together from there.
Right. One of the things you had said to me, so one of the tools you're really working with is Blue Mortgage, which those guys they're good dudes. But one of the things you had said, which I think more people need to copy, is that you're actually not the person who's doing all of the programming. You have somebody that helps you, because that it's as important as it is, it actually doesn't make you money. What makes you money is problem solving and talking to clients and referral partners and not making sure that CRM does the right notifications at the right time. So tell me about what made you decide to do that.
It was staying up till 3, 4 a.m. every single night after a full day of work and trying to figure out every single system and try to keep control of every single little item. That I realized like it's never going to get to the point where like I'm not an IT person. I don't write code. I don't know what happens on the back end of systems, right? So I'm like, you know what? I need to just fork out the money, and it's going to be so much better because I'm going to pay this person to do whatever I can't do. And then I don't have to stay up till 4 a.m. trying to figure this out and then beat myself down, right? So it's been one of probably the best investments is to get someone to help me. And it's on a needed basis, right? Like if I've got something new that I want to try to like implement,
hey, I got a couple templates I need you to install or set up this sort of notification.
Yeah.
So anybody listening, I encourage you to not be doing that stuff. You can, because like you said, it's stuff you do at the end of your workday, and you're not going to be as fast as somebody who's in there all the time. Like I guarantee that person is much faster and will problem solve faster than you will. So it's like the client trying to do their own mortgage when it's complex.
Always overthink it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you'll overthink it, you'll try to implement more things, and the next thing you know, you've done nothing and it's been 4 hours. So right. It's like, you know what,
or you're just researching how to do it. So not only is the time to do it, it's like, okay, I've got to actually go figure this out. I've got to watch a YouTube video and then go through the help desk. And then, so it's not often worth your time. You're better off to find another file and pay somebody a little bit of money to do that for you. Is there anything else when it comes to the process that you think, or you talked about checklists before? How do you know when to create a checklist, and are there any that you currently still use?
I use checklists for everything. It's like a comfort blanket for me. If I see it, I check mark it. I know I'm not missing anything at all. So whether that's like documents, questions I want to ask the client in a discovery call. Like I've got templates for anything that you can imagine. It just kind of, it keeps me stay on track as well. Cause sometimes when you jump on a call with a client, it's easy to kind of derail the conversation. Next thing you know, we're talking about Cancun, right? So it's like, if I have it in front of me, I'm going to go boom, 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 and then we're good. So I use it for discovery calls, document collection. Anytime that I do my compliance, I have a drop down that compliance has been submitted, compliance approved, like anything that I can do to like keep my mind at ease, knowing that I'm not missing anything, I implement it.
That's one of the reasons you're having such great success in such a short period of time. So where do you keep these checklists? So do you use them like in a Google Docs or like where, or are they in Blue Mortgage or somewhere else? Like, is there different? I'm just curious. I'm getting very tactical on this intentionally because I want people to go, okay, it's great to have a checklist, but if you can't find it, it's not much use to you.
Yeah. So when I first started, it was a mixture of everything. So it was spreadsheets, like notepads, like through like Google Drive and stuff like that. And then what I noticed is, okay, well, it's great. I've got it all in there. But then when it's the time to like find what I need to find, where did I put it? Right. So now I bring everything into my CRM system. So that way I can easily search anything. So, build a client profile, all the mortgages are there, all the notes are there, all the emails are there, everything's in one spot. So It's super easy to get everything in one area.
So you'd have your checklists inside in Blue Mortgage, basically, where you could use them for different stages of your process. Okay. That makes sense. And, I need a checklist when I was brokering because I forget stuff all the time. I'd get talking to somebody and then before the end of the meeting, I'd check, oh my gosh, I forgot to mention, but I'd always check that. I wouldn't follow it like in a linear weird pattern. Okay. Like questions, but you'd get them covered, but I'd always miss something. And I found having a checklist ensured I didn't miss anything that I wanted to cover in that stage. So, okay. So the other thing you talked about that you're really good at is problem solving. So give me an example of what you mean by problem solving. And I'm going to get into the weeds on this a little bit too.
Yeah. So for me, I always try to think, okay, what's the worst case scenario? What could happen? What is a request I could get from the lender, from the lawyer? So I try to kind of anticipate what's going to be coming next and then armor myself with what I think I might need to satisfy a condition or present to whoever I need to present it to. So example, I always tell my clients this, I'm going to ask for a whole lot of stuff at the beginning. The reason I do this is we may not need it all, but if it's at the last hour and we've got a couple of hours left for your condition of financing, and for some reason there's one item that has not been checked off yet, and I've got a few things in the books that I can present to the lender as an exception, it's going to help create the case for us, right? So I always get like extra documents for anything that I think I might need. So like extra pay stubs, like T4s, NOAs, like even if I know that type of file may not require it, I'll always just grab everything that I can and explain to the clients why I do it. And once I explain why, the reasoning behind it, they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, makes sense. And it's saved my butt quite a few times having those extra little things in their file. So,
right. Again, back to you're thinking ahead or looking around corners for your client. So did you get, cause I can picture there's mortgage broker listening to this going, yeah, my client doesn't want to give me the minimum documents. How are you getting extra? So why do you think you're not having any trouble with any pushback on that?
I was at first and I would crumble and just be like, okay, yeah, it's fine. But then realize that it's just going to bite me in the butt later on. Right. And then you kind of beat yourself down for being like, I should have just stuck to my process and stuck to what I always do. And then I wouldn't be having this problem anymore. So I'm super upfront with the clients. I'm like, look, I do this every single day in my life. I know what could happen and what they might request from me. So even if your ABC bank is not asking for it, that's fine. But I want it on file because of ABC reason. And then when I give them examples of like, hey, like on one file, this happened. We couldn't reach the employer. They were away on vacation for 3 weeks and the only person that could actually do the verification of employment. Well, had I not had the last 3 pay stubs, all the T4s, the letter of employment, the communication email that I had with the employer to confirm the income before I even sent it to the lender, then we would have been waiting until that person came back, right? So just having all of those things ready
so you
really
just
helps.
Provided a why. Like the biggest thing is it's why. If they understand why, people will do the how. But if you just say, I want all this stuff, and they're like, well, no one else asked me for that. So that's actually really good. You touched on that before too. You told me about you basically had you couldn't get an employment verification, but because you had done so much pre-work yourself. And so you do that on every file. So will you contact the employer for employment verification on every file?
I do. Yeah, I do.
I bet you
a lot of people don't.
I'm willing to bet. I don't think everybody does. And so what is something that you caught, or a problem that you were able to prevent? There was one by doing that. Can you think of any?
Saved a lot of time, because I've caught about 3 files that were going to possibly be a fraud file. And had I just sent it in, that could have affected my career for the rest of my life had I not caught it beforehand, right? So it's also a thing of having control. I don't want the lender to come back to me and be like, hey, did you know that this happened, when I call the employer? And then I feel like an idiot for not catching something, right? So I'd rather just do them all, make sure that I'm comfortable, because I don't want to just submit files and hope for the best, because that tarnishes my name in the business as well, right? So I do verbals on everything.
I love that you actually, like, some people don't care. I've heard, other brokers who are like, just don't have that philosophy, but because they don't have that philosophy, they also they have a hard time getting documents from people. But because you understand why you're doing it, and you have a belief in that this is, you're trying to problem solve for them, then you're going to get a higher compliance rate. Do you ever get anybody who says, no, I don't want to do it? Like, that's like, I don't want to do all this extra stuff.
Oh yeah. And then I tell them, that's great. That's awesome. But we're not a good fit. So it's
when you say that to them, when you say that to them, do people then change their tune? Is that like, they go, okay, fine, I'll do it? Or,
yeah. It's almost like, it's weird. It's almost like the parent telling the child, like, you must do this or else you're not going to the fair or something. You know what I mean? Like, and oftentimes they're like, oh, okay, well, he's not just pushing buttons. Like, he's actually serious. And if I really want to work with him, I'm going to have to send it in. I've only had one guy not come back. And that to me just shows that he wasn't serious. Like, if you can't commit to submitting an application,
honestly.
Exactly.
The time suck that would have been. Okay, so what other ways do you problem solve? So I love that you're problem solving around possible client problems. Is there any other ways that you've recently can think of where you have tried to problem solve ahead of clients or referral partners or realtors or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, like, to people listening, it's probably all going to be standard stuff, but it's just like, example,
but
like
a lot of times we just need to be reminded, because we start to slip. So I'm okay. I'm not expecting to be like, oh, I do this. It's a lot of it's just a reminder, like, oh yeah, I used to do that and I started to slip, and that's why I've noticed my process has gotten sloppy. And it's so, hit me with them, man. Anyway,
like, ask all the questions. Like, if something you're like, whatever, the lender might not ask me about it. Like, if there's a random deposit there that I'm not sure about, I want to know what it is. And if they give me pushback, it's because I always tell them, like, hey, the lender is going to ask me about this most likely. And instead of delaying it, let's just attack it right away so we can know what's happening. So, like, asking the questions that might be uncomfortable and that you feel like you may be intruding on somebody's personal life, like, you're asking it because you're trying to prevent issues down the road, right? So that's one thing that I find, like, when I tell people, like, certain questions and stuff that I ask, they're like, oh, you really went there? Yeah, because if the lender comes to me and asks me, I don't want to be like, I don't know.
Give me an example. I love examples because it makes it so. Can you think of something where you'd ask something that other people may be like, why would you ask that?
Yeah. So there was a client a while back, had 3 kids, I think it was. Yeah, 3 kids. Single only application, not separated or anything of that sort, right? To me, usually when there's children involved and there's, like, if there's maybe child support or child tax benefit, etc., the lenders are going to ask, okay, well, we see that she's got 3 kids, but single, not separated. Like, do you know, like, what's going on there, right? So I didn't go out and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, where's this person, right?
Who's your baby
so I just
daddies?
went about it being like, okay, like, exactly, right? Like, no, like, there's a way to do it, but it's just, and I told her, I said, hey, like, these questions might feel a little bit like I'm asking, like, weird stuff, but I just know from experience that they're probably going to ask me about it. So let's just kind of figure it out together. And it was simple. They never got to the point where they were super serious enough to, like, actually form a full-on relationship that they had to get separated for. It was a few months and then it just didn't work out, right? So, super simple, but at least knowing that is like, okay, well, here's why there's no separation agreement, because you know damn well if there's child support, they're going to be asking for a separation agreement of some sort, right? So just asking the questions about what it is.
But if you're anybody listening, if you notice how Jesse framed that, so you framed it from, hey, this may seem a little awkward. I don't know how you exactly said it, but these are questions that are probably going to come up, and I'd rather us get ahead of it. So then, if you put a frame on a difficult thing, if you just, again, don't just be like, hey, what's up with 3 kids and you don't have a separation agreement, that's going to be pretty blunt, but you can add a softener on the front end that then people go, okay, I'll tell you, I'll answer that question.
And like, I find like example for like credit as well, like damage credit, bruise credit, like nobody's happy or proud that something may have happened to their credit, right? But like, I'm not here to beat you down. Like stuff happens in life. Everybody goes through it at one point. So it's just about like, hey, like I know this was 3 years ago. It's been rectified, but I just need a bit of a backstory to kind of mitigate with the lender and explain what happened. Do you recall at that point in life what caused you to miss these payments or what caused this item to go into collection? And I find like when I word it that way and I show them like I'm on your side, I'm not against you. They're like, oh yeah, it was a crappy time. I lost my job. I was on EI. So it's just about how you present it and knowing why you're asking. If you just ask randomly, what's this about? Yeah, they're going to put like a barrier up and not want to tell you, right? But if you explain, this is what I'm anticipating might happen, then they're fine.
Right. It comes back to the why thing again, which you talked about really earlier. It's sort of like if you understand the why, then they're going to do the how. They'll ask the how. They're willing to work with you. So when it comes to working with referral partners, so we talked about lenders in terms of you're thinking ahead by doing the employment verification, asking the tough questions that lenders are going to bring up because if you leave it, what's going to happen? You actually create more stress. As you said, you're going to end up, the last minute, oh my gosh, okay, everything looks fine, but you need to explain this to me. And they're like, I thought, Jesse, what's going on? And now you're creating a very bad customer experience. But is there anywhere around referral partners that you find having these more challenging conversations or that is helpful or problem solving, I guess would be the other part of it?
Yeah, I always tell anyone I work with, whether it's a client, referral partner, whatever it is, like I'm a no BS person. Like I'm going to say it exactly how it is in terms of like, if you bring me a file that I'm like, there's a 50-50 chance it might work. I'm not going to be like, yeah, we got this. No, I'm going to tell you, hey, this is going to be a challenge, but I'm willing to fight for this as long as everybody's on board and that everybody's on the same page, right? So just setting the expectation is huge, I find, in those scenarios. And I don't leave anything to the last minute. Like if I anticipate something might cause an issue, I'm not going to wait till the last hour and we got an hour left for condition of financing to bring it up. They're going to be aware of it the first few days. And then if I have consent to talk about it with them, then it's going to be like, hey, we're doing A, B, and C to try to rectify this. Don't ask for the extension just yet, or like, don't freak out just yet. Like we still have time on our hands, and it's just keeping them updated is all they want at the end of the day. It's just not being left out.
Right. And so question for you. So if I'm your client and I get referred to you from a realtor partner, what does the conversation look like for you to get consent to keep them in the loop? I'm curious, like, how do you frame that to me as a borrower? What's the benefit for me?
Yeah, so I always do it on email because I want to make sure that I've got myself protected as well, right? So it's totally up to them. So I always say, hey, like this realtor partner I work with quite often, we have a really great relationship. I love to keep clients updated, but also your realtor updated. So certain times your realtor can maybe give me the information that you have, but that they can give it to me much quicker and I don't have to bother you. So it can be things as like just questions about the property specifics, anything about the deal. Like, are you comfortable if I share details about your application? Like, I'll never share how much money you make, what your debt ratios are, what shows up on your credit report. But if they ask me, hey, can they afford a $400,000 house with a $10,000 property tax bill? Can I tell them, no, that's not going to happen, or we can work with it? So it's just kind of letting them know what I'm going to share, right? So it's not going to be anything personal,
or is that on
it's
a phone
just a
call,
facilitator.
or is that how do you communicate that usually?
Usually, like on the discovery call, or
so
if I know that they've been working with a realtor for a long time.
With a verification that, hey, as per our discussion,
exactly.
Or whatever. Just because I'm trying to, I could see that being a very easy thing to do in a conversation, but harder to do in an email in terms of all of that detail.
Yeah. Yep. No. So just like follow up on the email, like, hey, thanks for chatting today. As discussed, since you're okay with me sharing some details about your pre-approval and run like numbers with your realtor, I'll get them looped in on any additional communications, and they're fine with that.
So what percent of your clients agree to that?
I haven't had anybody say no so far.
Right. You're great at getting people to listen to you, follow your process, and hey, this is what we do.
But see, I make it very clear that they're not, like, I'm not giving them information that's super personal, right?
Yeah.
Like, Exactly.
You're basically giving them, but you're giving them status updates. Really, it's like here's where stage updates and stuff, so that they know that things are moving along, but you're not getting into the details, specific details.
And if it's like, well, what's missing? Like, what are you waiting on? Like, if I'm not 100% sure that the client is okay with, like, if they didn't tell me like you've got full access, give them whatever you want, I'll still go back to the client and be like, hey, the realtor is asking about what exactly it is that we're working on. Are you okay if I share this, or should I just keep it general? And then if they say, yes, you're good to go, then I'll say, okay, I'm waiting for the employer to call back, or the employer forgot to do this or whatever. Like I always get further consent anytime that I feel like this could be maybe going a little bit closer to the personal side, right? But for general stuff like, hey, if the property price is $350 and I told them $345, but the property taxes are half of what I was calculating, like, yes, they're going to let me bounce the numbers with the realtor, right? So it's all about making it easier for them too. I would hate for the realtor to do all this work and be like, let's go see these 10 houses. And then just because they overlook that property taxes are double what we used, they don't qualify. We've wasted everybody's time, right? So I just kind of position it that way. It's more so just like a working relationship of like, let's get the numbers to work for you type of deal.
So one of the things I've always found is that when something doesn't work, a mistake happens, a problem comes up, that's when I always go back and I fix my process. I'm like, oh, I need a checklist for this, or I need to put in some kind of a safety catch for that. Can you think of something that didn't work and then you went in and that were able to make an adjustment so that it doesn't happen again, or at least reduces the chances significantly?
Those damn work permits. Yes. I was working with clients for probably 8-9 months, like from the moment that they arrived in Canada. When it checked everything, the work permit was A-okay, where it was valid for over a year and a half. So we're still within the guidelines. Next thing you know, life happens and we're close to a year now that we're working together, right? So at the time of looking and putting offers in and getting the final approval, noticed that that work permit was expiring in less than the 183 days that we're allowed to. So I now have a box in the CRM specifically for work permit holders with the expiration date of their work permit. We were able to save that deal, and I just got broker complete on it today, so I can sleep tonight. But yeah, that will not happen again. That's for sure.
Yeah, and often as the more you do this, that's where you find all the friction, you find the problems. And if you're paying attention, like Jesse is, then you just put in a process to hopefully avoid that. There'll be some other thing that you won't catch, but over time, it'll get better and better for your clients and generate more referrals. And so I think that's awesome. And so is there anything I didn't ask you about that you think would be helpful for our listeners?
If there's any newer agents, I still consider myself new. The imposter syndrome is real. Don't let it eat you up. And I find like everybody in the business, like I know it sounds like super cheesy and cliche, but like everybody I've encountered is like super helpful. So like if you're ever unsure about something, or if you have any questions, like I haven't found a broker that's not willing to give me advice or like help me out with something. So like, don't be afraid, get out of your own mind. And oftentimes we're the ones limiting ourselves. So like just rip the Band-Aid and go for it.
Yeah, I love that. But here's the thing, you're a very likable guy. So I'm not surprised that people are, there's other people that like, everybody's a jerk. It's like, well, you are kind of a jerk. So it's no wonder you're getting people to be jerks back to you. So where can people find you if they're trying to track you down, if they want to message you or contact you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on social media. So if you just Google my name, Jesse Hazen or Jesse Hazen Mallery, you'll find my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything. So you can do it there. Website is just jessehazen.ca. And yeah, you can
you
find
got a great social media presence. You're doing great stuff on there. And so we didn't even talk about that today, which is interesting. I thought we would talk about it, but I want this process stuff and problem solving actually is super useful. So we just go where the conversation goes. Well, hey man, thanks for coming to chat with me.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Hey, thanks again for listening. And hopefully you got some ideas, insights from a conversation with Jesse. I was chatting with him afterwards, and one of the things about problem solving for your lender partners in particular you will make way more money. And the reason you'll make more money is because when your files come in, lenders are going to look at it and go, oh, it's a file from Jesse. The files are good. And they're going to grab your file. They're going to go get you an approval quicker, which means you can get back to your clients quicker. And they're going to be happy, which means your referral sources are happy. And so Jesse, by problem solving for his clients, he actually is helping for his lender. He's actually going to create more business for his clients, more referrals. And, the top brokers that I know are like this, like guys like Jim Tolucas. He, one of the things that when I talk to Jim, he's like, he'll put his client on hold when his underwriter from the lender calls. And that almost seems like sacrilegious for most mortgage brokers because we act like, oh, the client is everything. And yes, the client's important, but without the lender partners, we really don't have a business. And so I love that Jesse actually has a mind and it thinks this way because I think it's actually serving him well and serving his clients. So if you don't do that, I encourage you to think about it. Thanks again for listening. As I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business that hasn't been solved. Your problem is who's got the answer. Hopefully you've got some answers or some ideas from this show. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Scott Peckford, and I will see you on the next episode.